Welcome back, Shalloners. Oh yeah, today we're tackling a topic that's been all over the news. Ellen DeGeneres being one of the meanest people alive, which I have been saying. I have been saying this. I have been screaming it from the rooftops. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing I probably haven't actually done a video about it, so you might not know, but my friends know because I've been saying it. We're gonna break down what's been going on behind the scenes with Ellen, why people are coming out of the woodwork saying that she's like awful, and more importantly, going over the checklist that makes a psychopath, how to spot a psychopath, and even the most importantly, what to do if you encounter one. We're going to break it all down. But first, just want to remind you guys to follow me on Instagram at ShallonXO. Also, if you want to book a shout out on Cameo, find me on Cameo at ShallonXO. Same with TikTok, ShallonXO, where I give you some daily wisdom and inspiration. So, if you're new to this channel, there's two things that I love: crazy people and celebrities. And isn't it wild how they're very often one and the same? If you're new, I used to be the editor of Star Magazine, and so many of our stories were about Ellen and Portia, to the point that I was like, who the hell cares? Oh my God, who the hell cares? Peter Griffin voice. But our readers did. Like, they loved her. They were obsessed with her. I'm going to move this down so oh yeah, you can see my merch shirt. That's better. They were obsessed with her because it's like, who were our readers? They were like Midwestern, like stay-at-home moms. And who were her viewers? Same audience, you know? So they were like very interested in like Matt Lauer. Okay. And like Ellen and like Rosie O'Donnell, like the people they spend their day with. And we just did a video about Kim and Kanye and why she always defends him. And we talked about confirmation bias, right? And how when we encounter someone who we like love, whether it's our boyfriend, our mama, a political candidate, a celebrity, and we hear info about them that contradicts the way we have decided they are, we fight or flight. We dig our heels in and we're like, nope, they're great. Or we flight and we're like, well, that source is bullshit. You're wrong. You know, and we saw this so much with Ellen's stories. Like, the feedback we would get was like, oh my God, they hate us for writing this, but they can't stop reading it, right? Like, oh, no one believes that that's true, but they're buying more issues than ever of that topic. So it was really interesting. So that was kind of coming into play. So I have been hearing so much tea and so much dirt on Ellen literally for years, that so much of it, like, I just went in one ear and out the other because I was like, who cares? I don't care about Ellen. Like, I always thought she was like fine, but it's like the Converse and the dancing. I was just like, you, madam, are no Oprah Winfrey. You are no Dr. Phil. But here's some things that I know about Ellen. She is so mean to that wife of hers. And this is what we would focus on. Not that like, oh, she's a monster behind the scenes. We did do stories like that, but we would focus heavily on her relationship with Portia. And like, poor anorexic, long-suffering Portia. And what Ellen did to her allegedly, that was always so bad, was that she refused to let this woman have a baby. I mean, what is Portia de Rossi? First of all, that's not her real name. It's like Ellen Butterworth or Susan Butterworth, something weird. Like, what does that woman do all day? Nothing. She does nothing. Like, they probably have a billion servants and cleaning ladies. She's not cleaning the house. She's probably not cooking the dinner. Like, all she wants is just a baby. It's not like Ellen would have to carry it in her body, or even like, oh, I have to have sex with her to do it. Like, they could literally go out and purchase one, right? It'd be very easy for them to acquire a child to keep her wife happy. And she just wouldn't do it. And Portia would like move out and storm out and then move back in. And it was just, and I'm sure it still is, this extremely tempestuous relationship, because you have one person who is essentially a tyrant, right? This is my way. This is the highway. You're not making any fucking money, are you? No. So I make the rules. Doesn't that sound like kind of, you know, Don Draper Mad Men? It's like, that's cute. You have an opinion, but that's actually all it is. That's a nice little data point that I'm going to choose not to log. At the end of the day, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. What are you going to do, bitch? Leave? Stage a divorce with me in our probably ironclad draconian prenup? I don't think so. You know, and it just always struck me as so sad that, like, and a cautionary tale, like, don't get into a marriage with someone if you don't know how they feel about kids. Because we always, like, we date people or we marry them and we think, oh, they're going to change their mind. Sweetheart, that's what they're thinking about you too. And then you end up in this standoff. you know, like OK Corral, High Noon. It's like, I want kids, I don't. And the people who don't want kids end up a lot of times winning because they just wait out the clock, right? But this is for men, because like a man can change his mind at 52, a woman can't, not in the same kind of way. So their relationship just always struck me as really sad and really not like abusive, but just oppressive. It just struck me as very oppressive. And I had heard so many stories from behind the scenes that is exactly how she behaved at work. Call me crazy, but if you're an asshole to the person you said vows to, you got down on one knee and you proposed to them and you promised in front of God and your friends and everybody to love them and honor and cherish them. If you're a dick to them, you're probably a dick to your personal assistant. You're probably a dick to the cameraman. You're probably a dick to all these anonymous Midwestern women in your audience. Nobody cares, right? And this was always what I heard, that Ellen is actually a monster. And she's always struck me as sadistic. And because I hate pranks. I hate being pinched, right? I hate being woken up when I'm not ready, and I hate being pranked. Don't scare me. Don't jump out behind a closet. Don't tell me my car's being towed if it isn't. I don't find it funny. I find it cruel. Like, we're not 9 years old anymore, and this is our sense of humor. Like, if that is how you get your jollies, I think there's something very, very wrong with you. And the fact that she would scare her guests like that, and then she always does it. It's like, oh, here's a spider and it's jumping out. And I'm like, it just struck me as very either juvenile or sadistic or both. So there was a comic out there. What's his name? It's nobody I've ever heard of. What's his name? Kevin T. Porter. That sounds like a fake person. Put out on his Twitter, he's like, everyone should be practicing kindness, like Ellen DeGeneres always suggests, who, by the way, is literally the meanest person on earth. And for every story that you submit about her, telling me like your mean experience with her, I'm going to donate $2 to the LA Food Bank, which is amazing. Food banks are like my pet charity. Like, if I had $1 billion, I would give them all to food banks. Like, if people are hungry, nothing else in their life matters. You're not achieving, you're not making healthy decisions, you're not learning, you're not sleeping well, your body and your immune system is breaking down. There is no reason in a country as rich as America, any of our citizens should be going hungry. And 1 in 5 New Yorkers, 1 in 5 relies on a food bank to eat. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. I don't like that. So I was like, yes, like, give the food bank. So we ended up donating about $600 to the food bank. I think it could have been more, quite honestly, but that's fine. The Shallon Triage raised $15,000 for a homeless mom. But the point is, stories came rolling. And now some of them were like obviously fake. Like, I saw Ellen shove a waiter's face into a bowl of scalding hot soup. He had 2nd-degree burns. Like, okay, no, you didn't. But a lot of them were true. But before we get into the true stories, I kind of want to work backwards. Usually we talk the tea and then we do the psychological breakdown. But I think in this case, when we're talking about how to spot a psychopath, we got to learn that first. And then when we hear these stories, they're going to take on a very different meaning. Now, I've talked about how to spot a psychopath before. Maybe a year ago, year and a half or something. Oh, they just postponed the Olympics. Does not affect my life in any way. I needed that extra year to train. I'm sure I'll be at this one for the sexual arts. Is that an Olympic? I don't know. I can get both my legs behind my head if that helps. I've talked about psychopaths before when we talked about Fire Festival, which I was actually invited to. And Billy McFarland friended me on LinkedIn. Like, why? But also, I'm listening, you lunatic, because I am fascinated by psychopaths. I worked for a psychopath. I used Star Magazine, and I'm not going to name names, non-disclosures, but if you Google Star Magazine congressional testimony, you can probably come up with the 2 people that I worked for who I would say, check almost all of the boxes for the Hare psychology checklist, right? So let's go through the Hare checklist. And I bring up my psycho boss because I got very, like, I went down the rabbit hole learning about psychopaths because I'm like, I have to be able to manage this. Like, I can't work in this environment Like, I don't know what to do, right? And I read multiple books on psychopathy written from the point of view of psychopaths, written by doctors and whatever. And the advice that every single one of them gave is, if you're working for a psychopath, get out. Get out. There's no plan of attack. There's no here's how to beat them. It is keep your fucking head down and get out. They are never going to change. You are never going to beat them. All you can do is get out of the line of fire, right? We'll touch more on that later. So let's go over the Hare psychopathy checklist. So the way this works is there's like bullet points, and you can get a score of 0, which this doesn't apply at all. 1 applies to a certain extent, or fully applies 2 points. So the bar for clinical psychopathy is a score of 30 or higher. Ted Bundy scored a 39. That's wild. So let's do this. Glibness and superficial charm. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Yeah, man, sure, come on over. Grandiose sense of self-worth. Need for stimulation and proneness to boredom, right? Pathological lying. They're conning or manipulative. They lack remorse or guilt. They have shallow affect, like a reduced emotional response, just kind of blank behind the eyes. They're callous with a lack of empathy. A parasitic lifestyle. They feed off of other people, right? Poor behavioral controls. Promiscuous sexual behavior. Early behavioral problems. Lack of realistic long-term goals. Impulsive, irresponsible. Failure to accept responsibility for one's own actions. Remember that one. Many short-term marital relationships. Juvenile delinquency. Criminal versatility. Now, as we go through these examples for Ellen, she's not going to hit some of these. She's probably not a criminal mastermind. She might be. I don't think she was a juvenile delinquent. She doesn't seem promiscuous or impulsive. She seems like she has long-term goals, right? But there's other things that you're like, oh, fuck. So maybe she's not Ted Bundy level 39, but do you want to deal with someone who's even level 25? No, you don't. Let's go through some of the stories that people submitted. And a lot of these, and I'll point them out, a lot of these stories came from people with verified accounts, but they're not celebrities. So that means they're probably journalists. You know, I have a verified Twitter account. Barack Obama follows me. Don't roll your eyes. You knew I was going to mention it. You know I was going to mention it. You'd mention it too. Cory Booker does too. All right, that's all I'm going to say. But my point is, to bring that up, is like, these people are probably not like lying about this, because that could blow back on their career in a huge way. So if these the ones are coming from verified accounts, I'm like, wow, that carries some more weight, you know? So somebody said, she's not verified, I work at Real Food Daily. I served her and Portia at brunch. She wrote a letter to the owner complaining about my chipped nail polish. Not that it was on her plate, just that it was on my hand. I had worked till closing the night before, and this was the next morning. Almost got me fired. Huh. Which Hare psychopathy checklist? Could that be grandiose sense of self-worth? I shouldn't have to look at someone with chipped nail polish? Could that be impulsivity? There was something that got under my skin and I wouldn't let it go. I'm also very fascinated with sociopaths, and I've read a lot of books by people who are sociopaths, and one common thread that I notice is that they can't let shit go. Like, if someone just bumps into them, they're like, I'm gonna follow you down this alley and I'm going to fucking murder you, right? And it's important to note the difference between sociopaths and psychopaths, because one is not the other. Every psychopath is a sociopath, but not every socio is a psycho. And we tend to think of psychopaths as like axe murderers, you know, the Ted Bundy. And no, but the difference is neither one of them have a conscience, right? But psychopaths take risks. They are con men, right? They're CEOs. Elon Musk, classic psychopath. John DeLorean, if you've watched that Netflix document or the Amazon Prime thing, Framing John DeLorean, classic psychopath. Grandiose sense of self, glib superficial charm, inflated importance, and risk taking. They're going to bet it all on this crazy new car. They're going to roll all the dice on this. And if we look around, we see that. I don't know enough about Ellen and her history because I don't fucking care to know how many risks, if she is a risk taker. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. Maybe she used to be. I don't know. But I'm sorry, but she simply checks too many of these boxes for me. And to me, it's her sadistic element that really puts like, dots the I on her behavior. Okay. So that was story number 1. This guy who is verified, Benjamin Siamon. Story number 1. She has a sensitive nose, so everyone must chew gum from a bowl outside her office before talking to her. And if she thinks you smell that day, you have to go home and shower. Okay. I would say that goes into grandiose sense of self-worth. He wrote 2. Story number 2. A new staff member was told every day she picks someone different to really hate. It's not your fault, just suck it up for the day and she'll be mean to someone else the next day. They didn't believe it, but it ended up being entirely true. This was my life at Star magazine. For no reason, and this behavioral pattern was confirmed in all the books I read about psychopaths, especially as bosses, is that they would simply pick you, fuck you, and they would make you the target. You would be, for no apparent reason, in their crosshairs for days, weeks, months, and then just as quickly as it arrived, it would shift. Done. Moving on to someone else. And this is another thing that they would say in the books, be the gray man. The gray man is like a military term. I remember learning in ROTC, like you want to be the gray man in your squad or battalion so that if you get like caught or captured, you're like, no one focuses on you. Like you just kind of want to be blank so that you blend in. You don't stand out to the enemy. You don't draw attention. No one's going to try to torture you for information. You don't even exist. And that's how you have to be if you work with a psychopath. You are gray. Just, I'm not even here. I'm not even here. And I believe the reason I got laid off from Star is because I'm not a very gray person, right? I was a rabble rouser and I was a galvanizer. And I was like, you know what? I think people should be able to stand up for themselves. Whatever, that's fine. So, more stories. And you're gonna pick up some themes here. Some friends who worked with her on her show said many of her staff members weren't allowed to be in the same room as her. Queen of social distancing, ahead of her time. This is something I had always heard about her, is that you weren't allowed to speak to her or look her in the eye, like at all. A friend was a PA on her show, like a production assistant. Got their first staff writer job and put in notice. And instead of saying congrats, which someone at Ellen's level, like, you know, high up, like a PA is basically like an intern. You want them to get a good job, you know? Instead of saying congrats, she was told to give their Christmas gift back. Punitive, vengeful, right? Psychopaths need control. They don't have friends. And when the psychopaths I've dealt with, the people who thought they were the psychopaths' friends, I'm like, oh my God, you are Smithers to Mr. Burns. And I remember saying, like, you have to wake up, because when they go down, and they will, who do you think they're gonna throw under the bus first? I mean, you! People didn't listen. It fell on deaf ears to their doom, you know? Another story. Oh, this one is heartbreaking. A friend of mine told me about a custodian she knew at the Ellen show who was fired because he was slightly autistic and forgot he wasn't allowed to look at or speak to Ellen, and he loved greeting everyone. I mean, crazy. Another friend of mine was a production assistant on her show, and when Russell Brand came into the employee break room to chat with the crew and hang out, Ellen came in and got mad at him, saying he didn't have to interact with these people. That's why guests have their own backstage area, right? So it's a very much like an us versus them mentality. And what psychopathy trait does that go to? Parasitic lifestyle, right? Because she only wants to align herself with famous people. She wants to feed off of them. Remember that fuck shit about George Bush when she like went to a baseball game with George W. Bush, who like drastically reduced gay rights and is like very anti-gay, and she sat next to him like having a hot dog, whatever, and people were like, hello? Parasitic lifestyle. All these things that she's very into. And this is not documented, but I have noticed this throughout my own personal non-peer-reviewed research of psychopaths, is a love for animals. Do you know who loved animals so much that they made a ton of animal protection laws? Hitler. Isn't that crazy? Maybe because animals are completely obedient and completely loyal, they're perfect. They're the perfect creature. They're never going to turn against you. They're never going to backtalk you. They're never going to try to outshine you. They're just there. People, on the other hand, are very messy and have this thing called free will. Very annoying. So maybe that's why psychopaths love animals. In my research about psychopaths, it's also fascinating who other people like in history are psychopaths. Do you want to guess too? You're never going to guess. You're never going to guess. Mother Teresa and Gandhi. Mother Teresa was a pathological liar. She was she would lied about how many people her foundation fed. She's like, it feeds 2,000. It fed like 120. She was quoted as saying like, I think the poor should just smile more. What? What are you talking about? She would deny basic medical treatment to like all of her little, her flock. But then when she had a heart attack, she chartered a private jet to Rome to get seen by like the Vatican's doctors. Fucking psychopath. Gandhi was a pedophile. He would have 13-year-old girls sleep in his bed with him. Get out of here. Get out of here. But that goes to show that a lot of these psychopaths, they lead with charity, right? And then that bamboozles people because it's like, but they do so much good. But first of all, are they doing any good at all? Actually, Mother Teresa really was not. She did not do much at all. These are facts. But even if they are doing good, is it self-aggrandizing? Personally, I don't care. I don't care why a psychopath does something charitable as long as they do. Ellen has raised money for animals. Great, good for her. I could give a shit. Like what she's like behind the scenes, I'm never going to work for her. It doesn't matter to me. But it is an interesting thread of connectivity, right? Let's see what else. Okay. My friend wrote for the Ellen show for 2 years and told me Ellen didn't greet her once. I've had a TV show, I've worked on TV shows, and until I did, it's like you kind of don't know the structure of a TV show. Like, oh, she's got writers. I'm sure she has tons of writers. No, you don't. Like, she might have, I don't know, maybe 10, but I wouldn't say she has that many. Like a full series would maybe have that amount. And it's like, what's a good example? Okay, it's like if waitresses never met the chef. Like they're in the kitchen and you can't ever look at them or talk to the chef. It's like, we're all working on this side. We're all back at the house. Like, what? What do you mean? It would be very, very weird. And so to not speak to your writers, I mean, ostensibly, they're writing all your jokes for you, right? So you would want to talk to them, get to know them, you know their sense of humor. They know yours. It's got to come off as authentic. Haha, I like that joke. Let's tweak this one. To not speak to them. So Ellen didn't greet her once. In fact, upon employment, staff were told they weren't allowed to talk to her. That's, wow. Karen Kilgariff was her head writer, assistant chef, assistant to the regional manager for 5 years until the writers' strike. That was a big deal in Hollywood. It lasted for a while. When Karen wouldn't cross the picket line, she was fired and Ellen never spoke to her again. So crossing the picket line is like, when you go on strike, like, you all have to be like solid. You got to be in solidarity and it's going to cost you money and it's a risk, but you do it in service of better working conditions overall. And when someone crosses the picket line, they're defecting. Basically, they're like, I'm sorry. No, I don't. They're a traitor. And so that's a very, very bad thing. I mean, my mom was a flight attendant like in the 80s and they went on strike for like 3 years. And the people who they're called scabs, who cross the picket line. I mean, if she sees one on the street, she will fucking fight him. Like she goes like, her eyes go completely black. She's like a great white shark. And I'm like, oh my God, like it's a big deal. And the fact that Ellen wanted her own head writer to do that, to be a traitor to her industry, the fact that Ellen like wasn't supporting it and then fired her, wild. So these are some of them, but my very favorite one was, there was that time she bullied Mariah Carey into admitting she was pregnant. I'm not like some incredible fan of Mariah Carey. She's just sort of there. But I am a fan of women being able to decide how much they disclose about what's happening inside their vagina and uterus. I don't know, call me crazy. This was like before Mariah had her twins. So it was a while ago. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years ago or something. But she was on Ellen's show, and Ellen was like, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? Like poking around at her, and Mariah was playing coy about it. And then Ellen was like, okay, well, let's get some champagne. And why don't you go ahead and drink some champagne? Because I know you love champagne. And basically she was like, well, if you don't drink it, then that's going to confirm that you're pregnant. And Mariah, like very uncomfortable, was like, okay, yeah. She had a miscarriage a few weeks later. She wasn't telling people for a reason, right? And then she now had to start talking about her miscarriage. That's sadistic. That's fucked up, right? And one of the things that really resonated with me in terms of Ellen's psychopathy is shallow affect, reduced emotional response. When she's talking to guests, she is looking right through them. I can see where she's looking. She's like looking off to the side, and she's like twiddling her foot, and she's like, yeah, that's crazy. So you ready for the tour? Like, does not give a fuck, doesn't care. And she'll throw in like a little funny joke here or there or whatever, but it's obvious she's not really listening. And I also hear a lot of like boredom, need for stimulation, which is why she pranks them. She can't just come and have a conversation with a celebrity. Oh my gosh, tell me about your new album. Are you ready for tour? She doesn't care because she's selfish, because she's a psychopath. There's no empathy. So why would she ever want to listen to someone else talk? I think it's significant. She used to be a stand-up comic where people listened to her. I've met a lot of stand-up comics, and they are very broken people. Not my friend Eliza. She's the best. But I don't think that that's a pointless data point, right? So that's why she has to prank them, because now there's something for her to get excited about. She can't just talk to these people, right? Yeah, I mean, glibness, superficial charm. I don't see any real warmth coming from her. Even the most emotion I saw from her is when Kim Kardashian went on there right after Tristan cheated on Khloe when she was pregnant. And Ellen was like, oh man, poor Khloe. And I was like, wow, that was a crazy display of emotion from Ellen. Was it? I don't think it was. I think it was pretty generic. And so all of this adds up to a profile of someone who's very scary to me. I've said in a recent video, when we deal with someone who's like lied to us or cheated on us or whatever, gaslighting us, it's not who are you? It's what are you? What are you? What is under there? And I always wonder, do psychopaths know that they're like this? Do they believe this is kind of how everyone is? No. They might not be like, I'm a psychopath, but they definitely think they're better than everyone else. And we see this in Ellen's behavior. Don't look me in the eye. Don't talk to these normal people. If you don't defect, if you're either with me or against me. That is the profile of someone who is very much superior, or so they think. And that's how they're going to act, right? And it's difficult because we as humans are pack animals. And we are drawn to so many traits of a psychopath. They're bold, they're risky, they're standing up and just telling it like it is. They're shaking things up. They're not beholden to anyone. Well, maybe there's a reason why. And that's why so many CEOs are psychopaths. That's why so many celebrities are psychopaths. That's why we date so many psychopaths, because there's something about them we want to stand next to. But we have to recognize that at some point leadership flips into psychopathy, and you can be a leader and still be empathetic, which is why I talk so much about alpha females and truly what an alpha is. It's not a pack destroyer like Ellen seems to be. Don't look at me. I'll fire you. Fuck you. Stay away from these people. Segregation. It's a pack builder. It's a pack builder, right? Because we have to know the difference. Otherwise, we get caught in the tractor beams of these people, whether it's simply they're filling up our DVR or they're filling up our lives. We don't need to normalize these people, and we have to call them out. And I've said, and maybe I'll do a video on this. I'll do a little bit more research on her. Reese Witherspoon is very much the same way. She's one of those mean girls, those Southern mean girls. If you have family from the South, you're from the South, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My family's Southern. And if the most incendiary phrase in the world is, bless your heart. What'd you say to me, bitch? Like, Those are fighting words. Reese is the kind of person to be like, you know what I just admire about you is you wear whatever you want. You don't care. And you just go for it. I think that's really special. I like that. And you're like, what? It's like, did you just compliment me, or is this the harshest burn of my life? And I feel stupid that I can't decipher the two. So Reese is definitely like that. Delusions of grandeur. Remember when she was arrested? Don't you know who I am? She had a DUI and she was like mouthing off to a cop. So we can do a video on Reese. We'll wait a little bit. For now, I think we've learned enough about Ellen to let that sink in. Knowing what you know now and what you have learned about psychopaths, do you view Ellen through a completely different lens? And most importantly, who in your life are you pulling back from and acting like, wait, maybe this isn't good? And the big question is, can a psychopath change? No, you can't grow a conscience. Sociopathy is, they really believe, is rooted in its nature, it's not nurture. People can, through trauma, become less empathetic and, dial that down. But by and large, psychopaths psychopaths and sociopaths are born. It's a matter of spindle neurons. And the fewer spindle neurons you have, the closer you are to sociopathy. The more spindle neurons you have, because they govern empathy, the more like you are to be depressive, like an emo kid, an empath. I feel everything, So you kind of want to be someplace in the middle. Honestly, if you're going to move through life happier, probably a little more towards a socio place, I want to feel less. Never more. Always less. But no, you can't change these people. And therapy is like the worst thing you can do, because therapy is just like finishing school for them. They learn how they're supposed to act. Oh, so I'm supposed to say that when someone tells me that their cat died and they need to take the day off from work. Okay, that's interesting. And with psychopaths, you might see flashes of what you think are empathy and connectivity. It always has a motive. It always has a motive. And what they do, it's such an abusive dynamic. And I saw this at my old job. Like, they take, and they ice. And then when they give you that meager morsel of warmth, you're almost slobberingly grateful. I saw people almost near tears with delight and gratitude that the psychopath was being nice to them. And I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here, right? Because we shouldn't live like that. At the bottom line, we don't need to live like this. We're all facing a virus. Miss Rona is after all of us. We have got to decide who we're spending our time with. Even if that time is an hour in the afternoon watching it on TV. We need to surround ourselves with better people. I want to know your take on all this. And if you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram at shallonxo and check out my podcast out every Wednesday, every place podcasts are found.